Shout out to Bring Our Q, Julius, you legend. We're going to do a joint interview, yeah? Yeah, we'll do a joint interview, Julius. Thanks for the support. You're a legend. From your girls, Raven and Ellie.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. Former unified super featherweight champion Mikaela Mayer posted this to her social media earlier this week, saying, "Next move in motion." What do George Ruiz and Mikaela Mayer's team, Coach Al Mitchell, all those nice folks, what do they have in mind for the former champion? It being that it's not likely she gets a second fight with Alicia Baumgartner in the near and immediate future. Alicia's focus is taking on Hyun-Mi Choi, and it's my understanding that that fight is underway, the undisputed super featherweight title fight. If Mikaela can't get a rematch with Alicia, what can she do? While assuming that Top Rank has not decided to sever ties to the former champion.
Assuming that Top Rank didn't cut her loose. I mean, lest we forget, Teofimo Lopez dropped a decision to George Kambosos, but Top Rank didn't kick him to the curb afterwards.
So perhaps they won't kick Mikaela to the curb. You know, after this loss she suffered to Alicia Baumgartner in what was a very competitive fight. Hell, some people, they scored it for Mikaela.
I didn't, but some people did.
Some people, you know, if she's still with Top Rank, they can get her a fight with the winner of Persoon versus Kerwat if Mikaela Mayer wants to become Alicia's mandatory challenger and force her to fight, force her to give her a rematch by way of the mandatory process. Assuming Mikaela still wants to stay at super featherweight, she can go that route. And Top Rank, they can make that happen. Top Rank, by way of their relationship with the people over there at Sky Sports. In Boxer, you know, maybe they have Mikaela move up in weight, take on Natasha Jonas at 154 pounds, beyond the upcoming Marie-Eve Dicaire fight.
I think Natasha Jonas is going to win that fight.
You know, just beyond that fight, Natasha Jonas herself has quite a few options. She can see about having a rematch with Terry Harper for all the marbles, all the belts at 154 pounds. She can do that.
She can move down in weight and take on Jessica McCaskill, win, lose, or draw in that Cameron fight. She can do that.
Or, you know what, she can stay there at 54, and provided that the Alphabets don't order her to fight any mandatories, she can defend those 3 Alphabet titles against Mikaela Mayer.
Defend those titles in a voluntary title defense in a fight that I think would get some attention. Mikaela Mayer has fought in the United Kingdom before. She could fight there again.
These scenarios, this is assuming that Mikaela does still have an ongoing relationship with Top Rank as a promotional outfit, and they are still behind her. If they're not behind her for some reason, she can always go over there to Matchroom. I'm pretty sure they'd like to sign her. I'm pretty sure there are several interesting fights and interesting situations that Matchroom is quite capable of putting Mikaela Mayer in. That's if Top Rank has made the decision to drop her.
I don't know that they have. I'm just saying if they did, she could always go to Matchroom. They could put her in a Harper fight.
They could use her. They could put her in a few fights. The bottom line here is that dropping that decision to Alicia Baumgartner, her arch nemesis, that doesn't herald the end of Mikaela Mayer's career per se. There's still a lot of good fights out there for her. I mean, take Jessica McCaskill dropping that decision all those years ago to Katie Taylor. Her career really picked up after she dropped that decision. And the same could apply for Mikaela.
It could, so let's see what her next move is going to be.
2 divisions south of super featherweight, down there at super bantamweight, International Boxing News tweeted, after Ellie Scotney's impressive win for the European title last Saturday, Scotney made it clear who she wanted next. IBF super bantamweight champion of New Zealand, Australian-based,
New Zealand-born, Australian-based super bantamweight champion, Nika Johnson.
Talked about this potential fight in passing and how the Scotney people, they might want to go another route. You know, Ellie, she's so impressive, and she passes all these litmus tests with flying colors against very experienced fighters like Melis Gangloff and Jorgelina Guanini, former champion Maria Cecilia Roman, more recently former EBU champion Mary Romero. She goes out there, she makes it look easy, but there's a common denominator with all of those fighters that is not present in a Johnson fight.
Those are aggressive, come-forward, mid-range to inside fighters, whereas Shernika Johnson, she's not limited to boxing mid-range to inside. Quite the opposite. She's got more in common with Ellie than she's got in common with those fighters.
She is cerebral, like Ellie Scotney. If she's got to box from the outside, she can. If she's got to work it out mid-range to inside, she can do that too. She can fight on the balls of her feet if the situation calls for it.
She can string combinations together, but she can play the sharpshooter equally well. And she is more experienced than Ellie Scotney as a boxer.
She's tough. She went the distance with hard-punching shotgun Shannon O'Connell. More recently, she weathered a bad cut and secured the W, secured it decisively against experienced veteran Susie Q. Ramadan. So if it's Matchroom's intention to put Ellie Scotney in there with Shernika Johnson, just know that's a very different fight than the kind of fights Ellie's been having.
I don't think we've seen the best of Ellie Scotney. I don't think we've seen the best of her. Not yet, but the same applies to Shernika.
Shernika's a bit older than Ellie, though far from old. She's 27 years old, the young Ellie Scotney, who's 24. Shernika is more experienced as a professional than Ellie Scotney.
That she is, sporting a professional record of 15 wins with 1 loss and no draws to Ellie Scotney's 6 professional contests, 6 professional bouts.
And as stated, I don't think we've seen the best from Shernika. I don't think we've seen the best version of her. Not yet, much like Ellie Scotney. I believe that Shernika is peaking. So if you put Ellie in there with just 6 fights under her belt, 6 fights, that's it, 6 fights, you're playing with fire.
You're essentially gambling. We have not yet seen Ellie Scotney in there with this kind of fighter under the hot lights.
It's not saying she can't do it. It's not saying that she can't win. I'm just saying I haven't seen her against somebody like this, so I don't know what happens if you do this fight.
Like I said in my previous video, I feel like Ellie Scotney's more ready for a Jamie Mercado fight. Yamileth Mercado, reigning WBC champion. I think she's more ready for Jamie than Shernika.
You know, we'll see. We'll see what Ellie and Shane McGuigan and Eddie Hearn, the people over there at Matchroom, we'll see what they decide to do. If they decide to go through with this proposition, if they decide to go through with Scotney versus Johnson. Men's welterweight news. Terence Crawford had this to say ahead of the Evanesian fight. He says, I've taken control of my career. Next fight is start of my next chapter.
We'll see how that goes. I'd feel a lot better about things if Crawford still had a working relationship with the people over there at Top Rank, even if it were just on a fight-by-fight basis.
I never liked the circumstances of Crawford's departure and the lawsuit that he filed against Top Rank. A lawsuit that seemed somewhat frivolous to me. There were frivolities there.
Just that entire convoluted mess. I don't want to get into all that. This event is promoted by Next Gen Boxing, Bash Boxing, and Black Prime.
We have seen player empowerment movements in other sports, and now we are starting to see it in boxing, said Crawford. I have taken control of my career, and my December 10th fight on Black Prime is the start of my next chapter.
Free agency is not the same for every fighter because not every fighter has the same marquee value.
Traversing the boxing landscape, which can be cold and cruel, without a major promotional outfit backing you, it can be difficult, but that's what Crawford more or less means to do. My hometown fans deserve another big fight, and we are going to pack the Shy Health Center once again on December 10th. Crawford is looking to extend his 9-fight knockout streak. December 10th will mark Crawford's 6th defense of his WBO welterweight title and his 17th straight world title fight across 3 weight divisions. I am an exciting fighter and the best closer in the sport. I have knocked out every fighter I have faced since 2016, continued Crawford. I'm going to put on another entertaining fight on December 10th and continue my knockout streak. David Evanesian is a tough opponent who is riding a strong knockout streak of his own. He's upset some really good fighters and has nothing to lose. That makes for something that the fans will want to see.
And listen, David Evanesian isn't a bad fighter. He's top 10 in the division's divisional rank standings, you know?
He's not a bad fighter. And as far as keep busy fights, well, I've seen worse fights, much worse fights than this. The biggest problem that this fight has is it's a pay-per-view. A pay-per-view going head-to-head with another show, a top-ranked show on ESPN, that same night. That's this fight's biggest problem.
This fight is intended to keep Terence Crawford busy until such a time as he can return to the table with Errol Spence Jr. and Al Heyman and all those fucking guys.
Even though this most recent set of negotiations' collapse has led a lot of people to lose hope. Lose hope that that fight will materialize at some point next year.
There's a lot of people, they don't want to understand, don't seem to understand that even if Crawford weren't fighting David Evanesian in December, the Spence fight wasn't going to happen this year anyway.
So him fighting David Evanesian for a reported $10 million? Why the fuck not? It's more than Al was promising you. Even more peculiar is that Terence Crawford's biggest critics, who just so happen to be Errol Spence Jr.'s biggest fans, don't find it at all odd that for an undisputed welterweight title fight between 2 unbeaten champions,
a fight that we've been waiting for 4 going on 5 years now,
confirmed on both sides, both the Terrence Crawford side and the Errol Spence Jr. side, that there were no guarantees for these fighters. There's no guarantee.
Once again, Terrence Crawford's biggest critics, who just so happen to be Errol Spence Jr.'s biggest fans, they don't take issue with this. They don't find it at all odd. What other promoter out there do you see?
What other promoter out there today is staging an undisputed title fight with no guarantees to the fighters? No guaranteed cash.
Do you think Bob Arum's got his boys and girls going out there for no guaranteed money? Eddie Hearn? Hell, even Frank Warren.
Do you think any one of these promoters, any one of these promotional outfits, you think they would stage an undisputed title fight at any weight of any kind for no guaranteed cash to the fighters? The amount of stuff that Al Heyman is allowed to get away with a certain section, a certain faction of fight fans.
There's a small section of the boxing community, they're almost like a cult, and they've deified this guy to the point to where he can do no wrong in their eyes.
They've deified him due to the success that he's had alongside Floyd Mayweather, never asking, well, if this guy's responsible for all of Floyd's success, then where's the next Floyd?
Where?
Because from what I can see,
There ain't nobody over there on PBC Island doing Mayweather numbers. There ain't nobody over there doing Canelo Alvarez numbers, for that matter.
and this cult following that Al Heyman and his PBC have developed over time have the critical thinking skills of the common housefly, perhaps less even than the common housefly, because at least the common housefly has survival instincts, and these people, they don't.
No, they don't. You've deified this guy. You've turned him into some sort of false idol, some kind of god.
One of the more interesting parts of Terrence Crawford's tell-all video was where he detailed telling Al Heyman about a $50 million hedge fund offer and how Al Heyman told him, why would you want to put a ceiling on yourself?
Why? Because piracy's at an all-time high, that's why. And if all I stand to make is from the upside of the pay-per-view, I need assurances that I get paid in the event there is no upside. That's why.
I expect that to the Haymanites, all of that's going to sound like I'm speaking Chinese. But the Ivy League educated Al Heyman, surely he, more so than most, should understand.
Terrence Crawford comes to you with a $50 million hedge fund offer. You don't even want to look into it. You don't want to investigate. You know what? $50 million.
In order to generate $50 million at the box office, this pay-per-view between Terrence and Errol would have to sell in excess of 600,000 buys. In excess of that.
625,000 buys at a price point of $80, to be exact.
Do you see very many pay-per-views doing those kinds of numbers, doing those kinds of metrics these days? 625,000 buys. Your guy in heavyweight, Deontay Wilder, just brought in a paltry 77,000.
You're expecting that these two guys are going to bring you in over 500,000?
Remember what I said. Just to generate $50 million, you have to sell 625,000 pay-per-view buys. If you sell that much, if you're that lucky, about 30 to 40% of that goes to the cable and satellite companies, not the fighters.
So if Terrence says that he's worked it out to where you can get 50 million up front, never mind what it does, surely one would think you'd look into it, at least look into it.
But Errol Spence Jr., the fighter, Errol Spence Jr., the pawn, he wasn't at liberty to do so, and Al Heyman didn't bother. Make of that what you will. I don't know what the next chapter of Terrence Crawford's career is going to look like, but the welterweight division, it's just not what it used to be. Finally, in men's flyweight news, ahead of the Joshua Franco versus Kazuto Ioka unification match set to go down later on this year, the WBO have now ruled that the winner of the Kazuto Ioka versus Joshua Franco WBA and WBO super flyweight world title unification fight on December 31st will have to defend versus former WBO flyweight world champion Junto Nakatani next. History is repeating itself in some ways, so it might not play out that way in some others. We've seen Kazuto Ioka in this situation before, in late 2020, when his countryman Kosei Tanaka, former WBO flyweight champion, moved up in weight, became his mandatory challenger, and Kazuto, in so many words, destroyed him. I'm not completely sure that's the same way this is going to play out for Kazuto and Junto Nakatani. I actually like Kazuto's chances against Joshua Franco, newly crowned WBA champion, mostly because, well, he's not as experienced as Kazuto Ioka. He's been stopped before, and he hasn't fought in over a year's time. Less than ideal circumstances for a unification match, which is set to happen abroad in Kazuto Ioka's neck of the woods. I mean, he's got home field advantage. He's more experienced than you are, more active than you are.
Too bad Joshua Franco didn't get to squeeze in a fight before he was faced with this unification match. He's going to be shaking off ring rust in this thing.
So as stated, I like Kazuto Ioka's chances against Joshua Franco, though not so much against his countryman, Junto. Unbeaten Junto Nakatani, who sports a professional record of 24 wins, no losses, and no draws, 18 knockouts. A very big kid as far as flyweights and super flyweights go. He's also a southpaw. He's also a big puncher. A very big puncher. And moving up from flyweight to super flyweight, given his age, the fact that he's a very young guy with a big frame.
Big for a flyweight, and big for a super flyweight. When he gets to super flyweight, he may be energized
from not having to cut all the way down to flyweight. Remember, this kid's only 24 years old. His body, in all likelihood, is still growing, and he will fit right in at super flyweight, where he may feel even stronger, and sharper, and faster, not having to cut all the way down to flyweight. This is what Kazuto Ioka will have in front of him if he emerges the victor later on this year against Joshua Franco.
And look, I like the idea of Junto Nakatani versus Kazuto Ioka, I do, but I was actually holding out hope that the winner of Ioka versus Franco would go on to take on the winner of Estrada versus Chocolatito 3, which is now for the WBC title, the newly vacated green belt that Bam Rodriguez left behind because he's moving down in weight.
I favor Ioka to beat Franco. I do. I favor him to win the Franco fight. And Kazuto, you know, he's been around just as long as Chocolatito. He's been around just as long as Juan Francisco Estrada. In many ways, he's the fifth Beatle. You know, super flyweight, you always hear about the Fab Four. Chocolatito, Juan Francisco Estrada, Soyun Visai, and Carlos Cuadras. Those guys, they've all had their wars. Kazuto in some ways has been the odd man out, though he's still very accomplished. He's a 4-division champion, the same as Chocolatito. And because I favor Kazuto to win the Franco fight, what I wanted to see was Kazuto take on the winner of Chocolatito versus Estrada 3 in what would be a unification match.
But now, former WBO flyweight champion Junto Nakatani has crashed the party. He's in the way. Is it too late to petition the WBO for an exemption to the mandatory so that the winner of Ioka versus Franco can fight the winner of Estrada versus Chocolatito?
Is it already too late? Can't Paco Vercel and the Championships Committee at the WBO find it in their heart to allow this division to get the consolidation it's been missing? I mean, if they move fast on this, if they start on it now.
I like the Nakatani fight, but I like a unification match better. Sue me.
Junto Nakatani's only 24 years old. He can wait. He can wait one more fight.
Get the guy to step aside. Let the champions fight each other, so that when Junto does get a shot, he'll be fighting for 3 belts instead of just 2.
It's the ideal resolution for this.